In 1997, a female USPS driver from the Rio Grande Valley, Irena Martinez, disappeared during her Saturday delivery route. 7 years later, when the city drained a canal for maintenance, a worker pulled something shocking from the mud, a blue USPS bicycle. This discovery would send ripples through Irena's life and reveal painful truths. On that fateful morning, Irena adjusted her cap, climbed into her truck, and set off on her route. It had been 7 years since her sister Colby vanished. The loss weighed heavily on her the same way it had every morning since. Colby had been close, sharing everything, even their USPS jobs and the dreams they once had. She was months away from graduating nursing school when she disappeared. The investigation went cold. No evidence, no body, just an empty house and unanswered questions. Help me with one, subscribe so I can make more good videos. Irena was jolted from her thoughts when her supervisor Jim called. Something had been found, a USPS bike in the canal, possibly connected to Colby. She drove to the scene, her heart pounding. Yellow police tape marked the area, and Irena's breath caught when she saw the bike. It was unmistakable, the distinctive blue frame and mail baskets. Forensics had already processed it, but there were no traces left after 7 years underwater. Detective Ua, who had handled Colby's case, stood by the canal. He explained that the bike had been spotted when workers drained the canal for maintenance. Irena's heart skipped as she asked, "Can I see it?" The sight of the bike hit her hard. Memories of Colby flooded back. Detective Ua shared that they were looking into surveillance footage from nearby intersections. Irena's ex-brother-in-law, Robbie, arrived shortly after. It had been years since they'd spoken, but the moment felt oddly familiar. Robbie's face had aged, but his pain was still there. Together they stood in silence as the forensics team loaded the bike into an evidence van. This discovery was the first lead in 7 years. Irena and Robbie talked, exchanging grief over Colby's things that remained untouched in his house. Robbie had kept everything, unable to let go. He suggested she take it, but Irena, though hurt, understood that everyone grieves differently. She agreed to come by later and gather Colby's belongings. Later, as Irena drove back to the depot, her mind raced with unanswered questions. At the depot, Jim reassured her, offering her all the time she needed. As she left in her car heading to Robbie's, the familiar neighborhoods felt different. She parked at Robbie's house, where she was greeted with boxes of Colby's things, nursing books, clothes, baby items, all untouched, still filled with the life Colby had planned. Robbie had been unable to part with any of it. Irena knelt beside the boxes, the pain of loss and unrealized dreams weighing heavy. "Thank you for keeping everything," she whispered, feeling the grief all over again. Robbie shifted uncomfortably. "Like I said at the canal, it's time. I need to move forward." Irene stood up, brushing off her knees. "Speaking of moving forward, what about the private investigator? We agreed we'd hire one once we saved enough money." She studied his face, asking, "We should have enough by now, right?" 3 years ago, they'd made a plan, pool their money to hire someone who could uncover what the police couldn't, but saving had been slow with their limited incomes. Robbie looked uneasy. "I do have my share saved, but things have changed. I might need the money for something else now." Something else? Irene's temper flared. What could be more important than finding out what happened to Colby? Before Robbie could respond, a car pulled up outside and a woman's cheerful voice called out, "Honey, I'm home." The door opened, revealing a woman about 30 with dark hair and a noticeable baby bump, maybe 4 months pregnant. "Oh," she said, seeing Irene, "I didn't know we had company." Robbie looked caught off guard. "Josephine, I thought you were..." He trailed off, then turned to Irene. "This is Josephine Colby's sister, Irene." Josephine's expression shifted to sympathy. "I'm sorry for your loss, Irene." Irene studied them both, piecing things together, Robbie's reluctance about the money, wanting her to take Colby's things, and now a pregnant girlfriend moving in. "So you're really moving on?" Irene asked slowly. That's why you want me to take Colby's things and the money you need for—" She gestured at Josephine's stomach. Robbie began to speak, but Irene cut him off. "I get it. It's been 7 years. That's a lot to ask of anyone to wait. You deserve to be happy." Josephine quickly added, "We've only been together for a year. It's all new." Irene waved her hand. "It doesn't matter." She turned to leave, but Robbie followed her to the door. "Irene, wait, please." She paused, facing him. His expression was full of guilt and grief. "Don't," she said quietly. "No explanation needed. I'm shocked, maybe disappointed, but that's it. You're doing what most people would do, living your life." Robbie's voice cracked. "I loved her. I still love her, but I need—" "You need to live," Irene finished for him. "I understand." Josephine appeared in the doorway, calling, "Honey, I really need help with the boxes. My cousin needs his truck back by 5. Robbie hesitated, but Josephine was already at a truck packed with boxes. Irene felt a pang of sympathy for the pregnant woman. "I'll help," she said, walking over. "I'm used to handling boxes." Josephine hesitated. "You don't have to, really." Irene reached for a box. Josephine quickly stopped her. "Not that one," she said, her voice sharp. "Take a different box." Robbie frowned. "What's in it?" Josephine tried to sound casual. "Just some old things. I was going to ship it." Robbie explained, "Irene works for USPS. She could take it for you, save you the trip." Josephine hesitated, then agreed. "Okay, thank you." Irene filled out a shipping form, noting that the sender's address was different from Robbie's. "I'm keeping my apartment a bit longer, just in case," Josephine explained. Irene nodded. Smart. She took the box, placed it in her car, and left. Robbie and Josephine were unloading the truck, starting their life together, while Irene drove away feeling a mix of shock, disappointment, and understanding. Halfway to the depot, Irene's phone rang. It was Detective Ua. "I have news. We got surveillance footage from 7 years ago. I think you need to see this." Irene turned around, heading to the station. Her heart raced. For 7 years, there had been nothing. Now, everything was changing. At the station, Detective Ua and Officer Torres were waiting. "We found several things," the detective said, showing Irene a video from a traffic camera dated November 8th, 1997, Colby's last day. Irene's breath caught as she saw Colby in the footage walking her bike. But as the time passed, Colby never left the building she entered. Hours later, a hooded figure emerged with the USPS bike. Irene's heart sank. "That's not Colby," she whispered. "Who is that woman?" They showed more footage, a woman with long hair dumping Colby's bike into the canal. "My God," Irene gasped. "Someone did something to her." Detective Ua paused the video. "Those are the questions we need to answer." The building's address was partially obscured, but Officer Torres found it. "It's 4782 Industrial Boulevard," he said. The detective nodded. "We're going there now." Irene insisted on going with them. "I need to see the place where Colby was last seen alive." Detective Ua agreed, but warned her to stay in the car. "If it becomes a crime scene, I can't have civilians contaminating evidence." Irene nodded. At the building, Irene stayed in her car while the detectives entered. She stared at the 6-story complex. It was ordinary, like so many others, but something about it felt ominous. The detective and officers walked toward the entrance, and Irene's thoughts raced. Who was the woman with Colby's bike? What had happened in that building? Was Colby already dead when the woman left with the bike? Irene's heart raced as she looked at Josephine's package in her car. The sender's address was 4782 Industrial Boulevard, apartment 514, the exact same building where Colby had been last seen alive. Without thinking, Irene grabbed the package and rushed into the building. Detective Ua, who had told her to stay in the car, looked at her with concern as she entered the lobby, holding up the package. "This belongs to Robbie's girlfriend, Josephine Irene," explained, her words spilling out. "She gave it to me to ship to her mother, but the sender's address, it's the same as the building where Colby disappeared." Detective Ua took the shipping form, his expression sharpening as he read it. Apartment 514, he muttered. Irene quickly added Josephine had short hair, though not like the woman in the surveillance video with long, wavy hair. The receptionist, Dolores, overheard and nodded. Josephine Miller. Yes, I saw her this morning loading boxes into her car. She had long hair then, but she cut it off a few days ago. Detective Ua exchanged glances with Officer Mendez and showed Dolores the stills from the surveillance footage. Dolores squinted at the images. It's hard to say, she said, but the hair looks similar. She did have long hair before, though. The detective asked about surveillance footage, and Dolores led them to the security office. As they fast-forwarded through years of footage, Officer Mendez called out, "Here, October 2000. They froze a frame showing a younger Josephine Miller in a dark hoodie exiting the elevator. Irene's heart skipped. The hoodie was the same one worn by the woman in the 1997 footage. Same hoodie, the detective noted. But how can you explain it, Dolores asked. Not everyone lived here in 1997 and still had the same hoodie years later. Detective Ua said, "We need to search Josephine's apartment." Dolores hesitated. "I can't let you in without a warrant. We'll get one," the detective said, turning to Officer Mendez to contact a judge. As they waited for the warrant, Ua tried calling Josephine's and Robbie's numbers, but both went straight to voicemail. Irene felt a growing unease. Josephine, Robbie's pregnant girlfriend, now seemed connected to Colby's disappearance. The same hoodie, the building, the secrecy, it was too much to ignore. The phone rang. It was Robbie. "Detective Ua, this is Robbie Delgado. Is something wrong?" Before the detective could respond, a woman's voice in the background sharply said, "We're late for the doctor's appointment. We need to go." Then the line went dead. The detective's face hardened. "We need to find them now." Irene, feeling desperate, spoke up. "I know where Robbie lives. If they're going to an OB/GYN appointment, there are only 3 maternity clinics on this side of town." The detective paused and then nodded. "Get in, but follow my lead." They sped toward Robbie's house, but it was eerily quiet. The pickup truck Josephine had been unloading was there, but Robbie's work truck was nowhere to be seen. Detective Ua knocked on the door, but there was no answer. A neighbor across the street said he'd seen them leave about 20 minutes ago, heading toward a maternity clinic. Detective Ua called dispatch to get information about Josephine's appointment. Minutes later, dispatch confirmed Josephine had a 3:30 p.m. appointment at Valley Women's Health Center just 15 minutes away. "Let's go," the detective said. Irene followed the police cars, her mind spinning. Josephine pregnant, moving in with Robbie, somehow connected to Colby's disappearance. None of it made sense. At the clinic, the receptionist confirmed Josephine had an appointment but hadn't checked in. Detective Ua made several calls, but both Josephine's and Robbie's phones went straight to voicemail. "Where would they go?" Officer Chen asked. The detective called in a BOLOO. Be on the lookout for both of them, asking for units at all major exits. He turned to Irene. "You need to go home. We'll handle this. If we find them, I'll contact you immediately." Reluctantly, Irene agreed. She drove home, her mind racing. At her house, something felt off. The front gate was slightly open. She distinctly remembered locking it this morning. Her pulse quickened as she approached the door. It was unlocked, slightly ajar. She pushed it open, calling out, "Hello." The house was eerily silent, but everything seemed in place. That's when she reached her bedroom and froze there. Hanging from the ceiling fan mount was Josephine. She was choking, struggling weakly as she clawed at the noose around her neck. Robbie lay unconscious in the corner. Irene's shock shattered. She grabbed a chair that had been kicked over and moved it under Josephine to give her some support. With trembling hands, Irene reached up to untie the knot. It took a moment, but the rope came loose. Josephine's full weight fell onto Irene as they crashed to the floor. Irene pushed past the fury taking over. "You're not leaving this world yet," she snarled out. "You have too much explaining to do." Irene quickly dialed Detective Ua's number, and he answered immediately. "Detective, they're at my house." Josephine tried to hang herself and Robbie's unconscious. I need ambulances now. We're on our way. Don't touch anything else. Hurry, the detective responded. Irene ended the call and crawled over to Robbie. He was breathing but unconscious with white foam at the corners of his mouth. Drug paraphernalia, syringe, spoon, lighter lay scattered near him. Irene realized Josephine must have drugged him, overdosed him before trying to kill herself. A folded piece of paper caught her eye on the dresser. The handwriting was neat, feminine, definitely not Robbie's. Irene opened it, her hands trembling. You'll spend the rest of your pathetic life wondering and hurting, just like I did every night. You'll see her face and know you failed her. The pain will eat you alive. Enjoy your nightmare. The sound of sirens grew louder. Irene dropped the note and rushed to the door, waving frantically as police cars and ambulances rushed up the street. In here, hurry, she shouted. Paramedics stormed in and Detective Ua arrived seconds later. His professional efficiency stood in stark contrast to Irene's chaotic state. The medical team immediately began working on Josephine and Robbie. She was hanging when I got here, Irene explained, her words tumbling out. I got her down, but Robbie was already unconscious. I think she drugged him. One of the paramedics working on Josephine pulled something from her pocket. Detective, you'll want to see this. It was a key ring with a large decorative letter, C. Colby's keys. Irene gasped. Those are Cole's, she whispered. That's her key ring. She must have used them to get in here. Detective Ua bagged the keys as evidence, his face grim. Did you notice anything unusual in your house? Anything moved or missing? No, never. I had no idea, Irene replied. As paramedics moved Josephine and Robbie onto stretchers, the lead EMT approached Detective Ua. We need to transport immediately. The woman's pregnant and her vitals are unstable. The man's ingested a significant amount of opioids. We'll follow, the detective said, his tone unwavering. Irene watched as they wheeled Josephine and Robbie out. Her bedroom had become a crime scene, rope still hanging from the ceiling, drug paraphernalia scattered on the floor, that horrible note on the dresser. The weight of it all made Irene feel sick. She barely made it outside before throwing up in her mother's rose bushes. Detective Ua followed her outside. Ms. Martinez, we need to understand something. Josephine clearly knew we were investigating her, but how? I called from my personal phone. She wouldn't have recognized the number, Irene said, her voice shaking. Officer Chen spoke up. The only person who knew we were asking about Josephine was the receptionist, Dolores. Detective Ua nodded slowly. She must have warned Josephine after we left. It's the only explanation for why Josephine acted so quickly. He paused, his mind clearly working through the possibilities. But why would she protect her, and why dump Colby's bicycle that night, but keep her keys all these years? The detective's phone buzzed. Officer Mendez has the warrant. They're searching Josephine's apartment now. He looked at Irene, still pale and shaken. I need you to come with us. We're going back to that apartment building. I have a feeling Dolores knows more than she's told us. After that, we'll need your full statement, everything from this morning until now. Irene nodded, following him to the police car on unsteady legs. She looked back once at her house, now wrapped in crime scene tape, and wondered if she'd ever feel safe there again. The drive back to 4782 Industrial Boulevard was tense, with Detective Ua's jaw clenched and Officer Chen sitting quietly in the back. Irene stared out the window, still processing the chaos unfolding in her life. When they arrived, Detective Ua went straight to the reception desk, where Dolores sat looking nervous. Ms. Ramirez, the detective said, using her last name from her badge. We need to talk. Dolores looked up, trying to play it cool. Is everything okay? Did you find the... Cut the act, Detective Ua snapped. We know you called Josephine Miller after we left. You warned her we were investigating her. Dolores's face went pale. I don't know what you mean. We're pulling your phone records as we speak. Officer Chen interrupted. Cell phone, desk phone, all of it. Every call you made today will be documented, so You can either tell us the truth now, or wait until we have proof and charge you with obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact. Do you know what Josephine did after you warned her? Detective Ua leaned in, his voice icy. She went to Ms. Martinez's house, drugged her boyfriend with enough opioids to kill him, and tried to hang herself while pregnant. That's on you. Dolores visibly wilted under the pressure. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Detective Ua turned to Officer Mendez. We need to search her apartment. We'll need a warrant, but the evidence is stacking up. Let's get it done. As they moved to the security office to continue their investigation, Irene's mind was racing. How had everything escalated so quickly? How had Josephine, someone she had thought of as harmless, become so entangled in Colby's disappearance? And what was Dolores hiding? It felt like the closer they got to answers, the more questions popped up. Irene could only hope they would find the truth soon before things got any darker. Dolores began to cry, her carefully styled hair falling into her face as she buried her head in her hands. I didn't mean for that to happen, she sobbed. I was trying to help her with what Detective Ua demanded, his voice sharp. Through her sobs, Dolores began to tell her story. She explained that she had taken Josephine in when she was just 15, an orphaned runaway who showed up at the apartment building starving and desperate. Dolores had let her sleep in an empty unit, brought her food, and eventually helped her get a job in an apartment of her own. She was like a daughter to me. Dolores wept. I never had children of my own. She was so lost, so broken. Nobody had ever loved her properly. What does this have to do with Colby Martinez? Detective Ua pressed. Dolores wiped her eyes, seeming to age 10 years in that moment. Josephine met that man Robbie at a bar about 8 years ago. She fell for him hard, but he already had a girlfriend, Colby. When Josephine found out Colby was pregnant, Dolores shook her head. She became obsessed. She said it wasn't fair, that Colby didn't deserve him, that she was just some mail carrier, while Josephine could give him so much more. Irene made a sound like she'd been punched. Officer Chen put a steadying hand on her shoulder as Dolores continued. 7 years ago, Josephine came up with a plan. She knew Colby's postal route, knew she delivered to this building on Saturdays, so she called in a package pickup request. When Colby came to apartment 514, Josephine killed her. Detective Ua finished flatly. She killed her. Dolores nodded miserably. She told me after I came up to check on her that evening and found, God help me, I helped her. I should have called the police, but I couldn't bear to lose her. She was all I had. What did you do with the body? Detective Ua's voice remained controlled, but his anger was palpable. We cleaned the apartment, replaced the carpet, repainted. I put her in a large laundry bag and drove out to the mountains past city limits. There's an old hiking trail nobody uses anymore. We buried her there. Irene was crying silently now, tears streaming down her face. But that's not where she is now, Dolores added quietly. 3 years ago, Josephine went back. She dug her up, said she wanted to keep her close as a reminder of what she'd done for love. She kept the bones. Jesus Christ, Officer Chen muttered under his breath. You're under arrest, Detective Ua said, pulling out his handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. As he read Dolores her rights, another officer arrived to transport her. She handed over her keys to the building, including the master key to Josephine's apartment. Unit 514, she said dully. She moved most everything out this morning to live with him, to finally have the life she stole from that poor girl. They took Dolores away in the patrol car while Detective Ua, Officer Chen, and Irene headed up to the 5th floor. The apartment was nearly empty, just some old furniture and a few boxes in the closet. Nothing here that's going to help our case, Detective Ua said, coordinating with other units over his radio. Let's check Robbie's house. They returned to the police car where Josephine's box still sat in the trunk, sealed and waiting. Detective Ua put on latex gloves and carefully opened it, while Officer Chen photographed everything for evidence. What they found made Irene's knees buckle. Inside the box were Colby's USPS uniform, neatly folded, her name tag still pinned to the breast pocket, her white sun hat, the one she always wore to protect her face from the Texas sun, her blue mail baskets and delivery bag, and her belt with the worn spot where she clipped her scanner. But in the center, wrapped in what looked like an old baby blanket, was an ornate ceramic urn. "No," Irene whispered. "No, no, no." Detective Ua carefully lifted the urn, and they could hear the shift of ashes and bones inside. He looked at the bottom where someone had used a label maker to create a small tag, CM1 1997 Colby Martinez. "She was sending her to Colorado," Officer Chen said quietly, "getting rid of the evidence." But Irene intercepted the box, her face pale with realization. If she hadn't offered to help with those boxes— "I'm so sorry, Ms. Martinez," Detective Ua said, gently kneeling beside her. "But we have her now, both of them. They'll pay for what they did to Colby." Irene choked out. She kept her bones all these years, while dating Robbie, while carrying his baby. How could she? Detective Ua nodded. "We need to get this to the forensics lab, confirm the remains are human, and build our case. Can you make it to the station? We still need your full statement." Irene nodded numbly, letting Officer Chen help her to her feet. She looked once more at the box holding her sister's belongings. Her sister's remains then got into the police car. The afternoon sun was setting as they drove to the station, painting the Rio Grande Valley in shades of orange and red. 7 years of questions finally had answers. Terrible, heartbreaking answers that Irene wished she could unknow. The police station felt different now, heavier somehow, as Irene followed Detective Ua through the familiar corridors. They paused at the forensics lab, where he carefully handed over the box containing Colby's belongings and remains. "Priority processing," he told the technician. "We need confirmation on the human remains as soon as possible." The technician, a young woman with serious eyes behind thick glasses, nodded as she labeled the evidence and logged it into the system. "I'll start the analysis immediately." Irene watched her sister's things disappear behind the lab door, feeling like she was losing Colby all over again. Detective Ua touched her elbow gently. "Come on, we need to get your statement while everything's still fresh." They had barely made it 3 steps when Officer Mendez approached with a manila folder. "Detective, the interrogation transcript from Dolores Ramirez. Thought you'd want to see this right away." Detective Ua flipped through it quickly as they walked, his expression growing grimmer with each page. They entered a small interview room where Irene had given statements before 7 years ago, when hope was still fresh and raw. "Let's start from this morning," Detective Ua said, setting up a digital recorder. Irene recounted everything: the Canal meeting Josephine at Robbie's house, the package, the surveillance footage finding Josephine hanging in her bedroom. Her voice only broke once when she described the urn among Colby's possessions. Detective Ua studied the interrogation file while she spoke, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. "What does Dolores's statement say?" Irene asked. He flipped through the pages. "Most of it confirms what she told us at the apartment. She's provided more details about helping Josephine all these years, how she warned her when we started asking questions." He paused at one section. "Says here Josephine was the one who planned everything. She was convinced Colby didn't deserve Robbie, that a postal worker wasn't good enough for him. Josephine saw herself as better, more worthy. My sister was studying to be a nurse," Irene said quietly. "She was smart, ambitious. She was going to be more than just a postal worker." I know Detective Ua's voice was gentle. "Dolores says she deeply regrets not reporting it when Josephine first told her what she planned. But she'd come to see Josephine as the daughter she never had. She'd been trying to have children for years, but couldn't conceive. When this teenage runaway showed up at her building, she thought it was fate." "Does she say how Josephine did it?" Irene asked. Detective Ua's jaw tightened. "She found a knife afterward, multiple stab wounds, but she claims she doesn't know the exact sequence of events." How did no one hear anything? Irene's hands clenched in her lap. Colby would have fought back. She would have screamed. The report suggests Josephine might have drugged her first. Detective Ua replied, or it could have happened in the bathroom where sound wouldn't carry as much. We won't know for certain until we can interview Josephine herself. A knock on the door interrupted them. Officer Chen stuck his head in. Detective, the hospital called with an update. Robbie Delgado is out of immediate danger but still in intensive care. Josephine Miller has been moved to a secure room. She's stable but still unconscious. They saved her barely. What about their vehicle? Detective Ua asked. Found it at the Sunny Acres trailer park about a mile from Ms. Martinez's house, Officer Chen reported, hidden between two abandoned campers. Detective Ua nodded, processing this information. So Josephine drugged Robbie at the house, left him there, drove to hide the car, then walked back to hang herself, all after getting that warning call from Dolores. Irene's mind raced. Why my house? Why not do it somewhere else? To hurt you, Detective Ua said simply. Look at the note she left. She knew the police were closing in, knew she couldn't run while pregnant, so she decided to go out with a bang, hurt you and Robbie at the same time. Irene felt her chest tighten as the weight of his words hit her. Josephine's actions had been calculated. She'd gone to extremes to leave her mark, even if it meant destroying everything in her path. On her own terms, while inflicting maximum pain, Josephine made Irene find her, made it happen in her home. It was all calculated cruelty. Irene felt sick. Colby never mentioned anyone named Josephine, never said anything about someone bothering her or Robbie. I was so wrapped up in my own life, my classes and work, I just assumed she and Robbie were perfect together. You couldn't have known, Detective Ua said firmly. Josephine had been watching from the shadows, planning. This isn't on you. When will I get my sister back? Irene asked, her voice tight. Her remains, I mean. I want to bury her properly. Once the forensics are complete and the investigation is officially closed, we'll return everything to you, Detective Ua assured her. He stood gathering his files. Is there anything else you need right now? I want to go to the hospital, Irene said quietly. See Robbie. I need to be there when he wakes up. Detective Ua nodded. I'll have Officer Chen drive you and Miss Martinez. I'm truly sorry for your loss, but we've got him. Both of them. They'll face justice for what they did to Colby. The drive to Valley Regional Medical Center was quiet. Officer Chen seemed to understand that Irene needed silence to process everything. The evening was falling, painting long shadows across the hospital parking lot as they arrived. Inside the ICU was a controlled chaos of beeping machines and quiet efficiency. A nurse directed them to Robbie's room after checking with security. Apparently, Detective Ua had called ahead to authorize the visit. Irene stood at the window looking into Robbie's room. He lay still in the bed connected to multiple monitors and IVs. His face was pale, but his chest rose and fell steadily alive, unlike Colby. He'd survived Josephine's final act of cruelty. He's lucky, the nurse said quietly beside her. A few more minutes and we might not have been able to bring him back. The amount of opioids in his system was massive. Irene pressed her palm against the glass. Robbie had loved Colby. She knew that. Whatever his faults, however he'd moved on, he genuinely cared for her sister. And now he'd almost died because of it. Because Josephine couldn't let go of an obsession that had already claimed one life. When will he wake up? Irene asked. It's hard to say. Could be hours, could be tomorrow. His body needs time to recover. Irene nodded, not moving from the window. She thought about Josephine somewhere else in the hospital, also fighting for her life. The woman who'd murdered her sister kept her ashes as a trophy and lived a lie for 7 years. The woman carrying Robbie's child. What a mess. What a terrible, twisted mess. But at least now there would be answers. At least now there would be justice. I'll wait, Irene said softly, settling into a chair where she could see Robbie through the window. However long it takes, I'll be here when he wakes up. I owe Colby that much. To see this through, to make sure Josephine pays for what she's done. As the hospital settled into its evening routine around her, Irene kept her vigil watching over the man her sister had loved, and she made a silent promise Josephine would face justice. Colby would finally rest in peace, and somehow they would all find a way to heal from this nightmare that had lasted 7 long years. Thank you for watching the whole video. Please give me a like and subscribe so I can make more good videos.